All right, good afternoon. This is Professor Bobo, and I am doing my lecture for week 2. Today, I will be sharing with you a PowerPoint I've created to go over specific information in regards to the next projects. All right, let me just share my screen really quickly. Oh no. Okay, let me share my screen. All right, so we're talking about writing chapter 1 of the Capstone Project, and this should give you some additional information. So what makes a good research project? Again, it has to be relevant, either the work of the funding body or the student's course. The research is unique and offers insight, and the title, aims, and objectives are all clear and succinct, and they're comprehensive, and a thorough background research and literature review has been undertaken. Also, that there is a good match between the issue to be addressed and the approach being adopted, that the researcher demonstrates relevant background, knowledge, and experience, and timetables, resources, and budgets have all been worked out thoroughly with the most eventualities covered. I'm going to go over that because our timetable is a lot smaller than other researchers, other research projects. So I will give more of an example as to how to handle that. And useful policies and practices are there. So why some of the research proposals fail? The aims or the objectives are not clear. So this is something that when you're deciding on your project, it's super important that you have a clear understanding and that it's not a vague topic. We'll go into that a little bit more. I have some samples. Bullying and just overall is not enough. We have to design a research question and that attempts to address something about the bullying aspect, and that's where it needs to be narrowed down. There's a mismatch between the approaches being adopted and the issues that are being addressed. The overall plan is too ambitious and too difficult to achieve in the timescales. Remember, we do need to make sure that we are not trying to do too much. Our course doesn't allow us to do too much. And the researcher doesn't seem to have conducted an in-depth background research. So it's important that the literature review has enough information to give you some solid analysis. And the problem is of insufficient importance, okay? What is the problem? It's a significant, perplexing, and challenging situation. It's real or artificial, the solution of which requires reflective thinking, and that's the whole premise behind our project. It has to be reflective thinking. It's a perplexing situation after it has been translated into a question or a series of questions that help direct the subsequent inquiry. So again, when we take a large topic such as bullying, we need to make sure that we answer a series of questions. The elements of the research problem. It aims to, or the purpose of the problem for investigation. This is going to answer the why question. Why is there an investigation, an inquiry, or a study on this particular subject? The subject matter or the topic to be investigated. This is going to answer the what question. What is going to be investigated or studied? The place or the location where the research is to be conducted. This answers the question where. So you're going to use one of the schools or both of the schools in which you are doing your practicum study on, and then you're going to get a small sample size, and we'll talk more about that, okay? The period of time of the study during which the data was gathered answers the question when. So again, we're looking at information that probably has already been collected or that was recently collected so that we're not out there. And maybe we only do a particular questionnaire or survey that gets distributed and brought back to us, because that allows us enough time to, if we're going to survey 15 7th graders and 20 8th graders, we're going to give out a survey, they're going to answer it, and then we get it back. That's enough time for us to do that, to analyze that data, okay? And then when the study is to be carried out, all right? The population or the universe from whom the data are to be collected, this answers the question who and from whom. In the example I just gave you, I said 15 7th graders, 20 8th graders. Those are the respondents, and those are the people that we're going to gather the data from. So remembering, of course, you're fully aware of the SMART characteristics: specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, and time-bound. Okay. Remembering that the problem should be specifically stated. We wanted 2 research problems, questions. So it should, kind of answer 2 questions, address 2 questions. Measurable is measurable by using the research instruments, apparatuses, or equipment. We talked about surveys, questionnaires, maybe a piece of something that they learned or that they turn in after delivery of a lesson. That gives you less time, so I wouldn't, that's kind of aggressive, so I wouldn't go for that. Realistic, real results are attainable because they're gathered scientifically and not manipulated or maneuvered. And time-bound. The time frame is required in every activity because the shorter the completion of the activity, the better. So we're looking at a short completion. So sources of the research problem: specialization of the researcher. We're in counseling, you're developing that, so you're using those skill sets. Current and past researchers, your literature review will give you those past researchers, and then also some current ones. Recommendations from theses and dissertations and other research journals, and then original and creative ideas of the research based on the problem that to meet its locality and country. All right, so criteria of a good research problem: it's interesting, it's innovative, it's cost effective, it's relevant to the needs and problems of the people, relevant to the government's thrust, and measurable and time-bound. Okay, so the research title has to be reflective of its problem. It must answer the following questions. What are you trying to investigate? What are you trying to find out, determine, or discover? Who will answer? Who are the respondents or the subjects to be studied? Where? Question will indicate the research's local setting and the place where the research study is going to be conducted. So again, just to organize yourself, Chapter 1 is the intro. Chapter 2 is the review of the related literature. Remember, we're not writing that in this particular course, but you will be gathering those 16 journals or information, books to later write it in 605. 3 is the technical background, and 4 is the methodologies. So Chapter 1 is the project context, the purpose and description of the project, the objectives of the project, the scope and limitations of the project. So the proponents should introduce the presentation of the problem. That is, what is the problem all about? The proponent should also describe the existing and prevailing problem situation based on your experience. And this scope may be global, national, regional, or local. Of course, we're looking at more of a local thing. The proponent should give a strong justification for selecting such research problem in his or her capacity as a researcher, being part of the organization or system, or, so that's why we obviously want it around the realms of school counseling. And the researcher states a sentence or 2 that would show a link between the relationship of the rationale of the study and the purpose of the research problem. So what is the function of your project? What is good in your project? What makes your project unique, innovative, and relative? So you're going to start with a general objective, which is the very parallel to the project title. Explode the general objective into specific objectives that will help realize the proposed study. And of course, the objective should be SMART. The scope and limitations of the project. Think the project of the project scope box. High-level scope defines the sides of the box and separates what is relevant to your project from what is irrelevant. And the scope refers to the work that needs to be accomplished to deliver a product or a service or the result within the specific features of the function. So the scope explains the nature, coverage, and time frame of your study. The limitations, on the other hand, explains all that are not included in your project. In other words, the scope of the project gives an overview of all the deliverables, the things that your project gives and delivers, and the tools and technology used that will be used in the project development, while the limitations of the project are the bounds of the project, such as the area things that are out of the scope of the project. So I wanted to go into some samples, okay? So let's just take the topic bullying, and these 3 samples are on the topic of bullying. And these are projects that have already been, capstone projects that have already been created. So this is not something that I would want you to repeat. So how does a local middle school compare to the national data around the issues of bullying, okay? So what this particular project did was survey 24 students at school A, 19 students at school B. This was a combination of 7th and 8th grade students. They used survey questions and was issued to these 24 students at A, 19 students at B. And the survey questions were taken directly from the OAS survey. And this is because OAS is a huge national program that many schools are using to eliminate bullying. And then they used the national data, which was polled 24,000 students in that same grade level. And then they did a comparison, okay? So that is how you're gonna narrow down the idea of bullying. And the question became, how do local schools compare to the national data around the issue of bullying? And there's the question, all right? Here's another one, bullying. Okay, so we're talking about bullying again. And here was a master's, and this one was a more lengthier one. So this may not be able to, you may not be able to utilize this one, but the persistence of bullying at schools and public policy responses, what ails? So the research project looks at the pervasive problems of bullying in schools and investigates why, despite almost all of the states in the US adopting anti-bullying policy, the problem doesn't seem to go away, but in fact, its incidents continue to rise. So primary research was conducted through questionnaires distributed to anti-bullying school counselors, deputy principals, principals of a few schools in 2 states. And so the size sample was more of the school counselors and the principals and how they're dealing with it, okay? And then the survey questions were devised using common anti-bullying policy frameworks, again, that OAS, because it's so national and it has a lot of impact. And then it was used in most states and having each question correspond to one policy element of this framework, okay? So again, it was issued, it's a small sample size, and this was across two states. So it gave a comparison between 2 states. This is a little lofty for our particular project, capstone project, because we don't have that much time, but just giving you different ideas of how to research is conducted, and how, and it's through a questionnaire, and and then going through that to look at and having a comparison. Okay. And then this is our example 3, bullying again, and the self-esteem and its effects on bullying behavior. So there was, according to the research that she discovered, there was a conflicted results to data to date about whether or not self-esteem is connected to bullying behavior. And some results showed relationships between bullying behavior and low self-esteem, and then high self-esteem, and then mixed results, and then no relationship at all. So she was, attempting to investigate all of these different types of self-esteem, and what was the relationship as it results to bullying. All right, and the paper is looking at the research that has been done to date, the limitations involved in the study, and where the future research should be directed to obtain a better understanding of the relationships between self-esteem and bullying behavior. So you can see the questions, the research questions, even though they weren't explicitly stated, they were implied. The implication was the limitations where the research should be directed to obtain a better understanding of relationships between self-esteem and bullying behavior. All right, so that covers what we're going to be doing for chapter 1. Your focus this week should be on chapter 1. And there's a couple of other things I wanted to go ahead and talk about. So as you're beginning to write your problem statement, you will provide a concise statement of the problem in just a few paragraphs, okay? You're gonna use past data in this section, okay? Then you're going to write a statement of you'll make a case for proposed relationships between the variables that are under the study. And then you're going to give example of 3 headings in this chapter 1, where it's going to guide them through your argument. Okay, so you should have 3 headings, subheadings in this chapter that will guide them through your argument of your research question. And then you should divide your section headings using subsections and making sure to include at least 2 at any given level. Then you're going to include your research questions. So after a brief introduction, you're going to list your research questions, and you can number them. Obviously, we're doing 2. That's it, okay? And the research questions should be worded in exactly the same way and will be repeated again in chapter 3, okay? And then you're gonna also write the significance of the study. Here you'll make a case for why the problem you have proposed to study is both interesting and important, for this chapter, okay? And then you're gonna include your definition of terms. And you're going to provide your readers with definitions of any specialized terms that you use, especially those that have multiple definitions in the literature. You may quote specific authors whose work you may be following, and this is not to place the discussion of operational definitions, such as measures of your constructs, and those will be placed in chapter 3. All right, so this is my lecture for week 2. Hopefully this gets you going. You should definitely have about 2 to 3 pages of chapter 1 completed by the end of this week so that you can be on task for your project. All right, thank you.